a Motorsport Podcast Network production. Hey everyone, welcome along. Aaron Noonan here. This is the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn, celebrating 40 years of delivering you top gear at low prices. Shop in-store or online today at autobarn.com.au. We love the support that the Sleuth faithful give us, and before we get into this ep, there's now a way that you can become a bigger part of our family via V8 Sleuth Podcast Plus. Ad-free episodes, exclusive extra eps of the main features. Get on board now. v8sleuth.supportingcast.fm. The link is in the show notes with details on how you can join up and enjoy those benefits. One of those benefits is hearing more stories from my guest on this pod, Cameron McLean. Now, on our Pod Plus offering, you'll hear more of his great stories from Super Touring, from his Volvo racing experiences, but you can only hear them by being a Pod Plus member. Now, if you've heard part one of my chat with Cam, you'll have heard a range of great stories, and this ep, part two, well, there's plenty more. It's very much a case of the highs and lows of motorsport, and 2001 is a year with all of that and much, much more. We headline it with the era of being a team owner, or a co-owner in fact. Paragon Motorsport was the team that Cam was involved in, and the bizarre scenario of the team's V8 Supercar being carted away from the Queensland 500 event via a court injunction. Mid-race, mid-event I should say this is. This is one of the most unbelievable stories that's ever happened in V8 Supercar racing. And that was in a year where Cam had signed a deal to leave the team that he co-owned because there was a chance to drive for Glenn Seaton and Ford Tickford Racing. He talks about how he signed that deal, but it wasn't fully signed and it never happened. It collapsed when Craig Lowndes' Ford signing triggered the availability of a Bathurst 1000 winner. In fact, a future winner alongside Craig Lowndes at Bathurst later on in time. That's all in this episode of the podcast. There's tales of rolling a Porsche, a near miss on the mountain in his last Bathurst 1000, and so much more. It was magnificent to catch up with Cam McLean, so please relax, sit back and enjoy this episode of the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn. It's part two of my chat with Cameron McLean. You then did something that some would deem a little crazy. So 2000, the Greenfield team presses on. You go and upgrade AU Falcon, which I think came from Paul Wheel's team. But later in the year, you and a couple of associates put together a group and you end up buying the team and it gets renamed Paragon. Tell me about the reasoning behind this and how that came to be, to go from kind of car preparer, race driver to suddenly team co-ownership. What was the thinking behind all that?
Yeah, I think, well, what happened was I knew Dad was scratching. We were all scratching to pay for it and ran the business and probably running out of money really. And Dad was, and then it was sort of either fold it or find something to do it. Because I said to Dad a couple of years before that, I said, mate, this is all lovely. We're spending all this money. We're earning week by week, to go racing. And I said, mate, if we've got to stop it, we can just stop it. We don't have to. We've got further than we've got further than we thought we'd ever get. So we're ecstatic with that. And if we've got to pull it up and park it up, we can do that. He said, no. He said, I'm happy to keep going. He said, you're doing what you want to do. And he said, on my side, I'm also doing what I want to do. I'm going to drivers' briefings with George Shepherd and with Dick Johnson and with Alan Heafy and with all these guys that he's watched on TV for years and years, and people that were heroes to him are now his peers. So he really enjoyed it too, and he didn't mind doing it. So, but it got to the point where enough was enough, I think. And myself, Jamie Blakey, Ross Dillon, and Michael McMahon put together a plan and a proposal to Dad to sort of, and he knew what we were doing. It was all amicable, to buy him out and form Paragon Motorsport. And so that happened. That wheel car was owned by Greenfield. So that went back to Greenfield. That was the car that Paul Wheel rolled over on day one of testing at Lakeside. So the chassis of that car was actually buggered. It was really good at Canberra, Adelaide, Winton, the places where you didn't need any torsional stiffness. You go to Phillip Island, the thing you might as well drive a marshmallow. It was horrible. But that car went back to Greenfield. We moved everything from Banyo, where the old man had the shop over there, moved it all over to Brendale, renamed it Paragon Motorsport, and we bought the prancing horse, Bud Falcon, And
well, that came a year later. That one came a year later. There was the self-built car before that, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, no, that's right. We still with Greenfield, and we decided they'd build a new car. We're sick of getting Wheelie's car was just worn out. There's nothing wrong with it. They didn't do anything wrong by us. They sold us what they sold us, and decided to build a new car. So Steve Hines, who used to work for Stone Brothers, he came on board and built it, and Bruce Partington was there, who, Doug Partington's been involved with DJR, and Bruce was involved with DJR. He was Dick's crew chief when he went to NASCAR and stuff. Bruce was with us, so it was only myself, Hinesy, Bruce, and Ross Dillon. Four of us. Mark McLaughlin was doing the motor, and Dave Farron was doing the body. So there was six of us pretty much until the subcontractors, and that was our whole team to run a supercar in 2001, and we built PAR 001, first chassis Paragon ever had, and that's the only chassis Paragon ever built,
Yeah.
And, and it was actually a really good thing. We could run in the top 10 in that car when we finally got it finished, and Greenfield on board, and that year has plenty more stories about it after that. But yeah, so that in Paragon form, we got it all going. It was running well,
It did. I want to rewind back a little bit to the Paragon people. How did you know? I mean, I had a long relationship with Jamie Blakey, who sadly is no longer with us.
Absolutely.
Our listeners will know Jamie from Porsches and Carrera Cup, very prominently involved there over the years. I remember Ross Dillon racing GTP and all sorts of other stuff. But who were the guys, and how did you all come to know one another to bolt together to end up with this, hey, let's buy your dad out and be supercar team owners? And were you all equal in it?
Yeah, it was. We had. Yeah, early on we were all equal. It was equal shares. All put our money in. I actually remortgaged my house to buy a race team, which is.
Oh, how did that go down at home?
No, it was all. Gina was up for it, and it was all good. We only had three. What was that? 2001. We only had 2 5-year-olds and a 7-year-old, and at home, so it wasn't too much drama if it all went bad. But no, we remortgaged it and got that going. Jamie Blakey came away with us a bit with even the EL. He was a good friend of Bruce Partington, who was with us for the whole time of the V8 stuff. Bruce and the BMWs. He was a mate of Bruce's, who used to come away, just help us wash the windscreens, etc. And he could become more and more involved. Then he became a friend of ours. He'd stay at our house the night before we'd catch the airplane to Phillip Island or whatever. And he was quite a good pal for a long time there. And so that's how we met him. And he and Ross Dillon sort of put the idea together. And Ross Dillon was another one that we were at Lakeside. He was running a Ross will admit himself he's about as mechanical as a spoon. He drives the car, but he doesn't know how to do anything to a car, But it was running bad, and I think he was pitted beside us, and we ended up changing the spark plugs in his V6 Commodore and getting it retuned for him, and the thing went well. So he sort of we ended up prepping his cars and giving him a hand to do some stuff as well. And actually that Commodore I drove around the Gap making TV ads, completely illegal, and back in the day, things you could do. But he became quite a good friend as well, and I still see Roscoe. And Michael McMahon was a business acquaintance of Ross's, so which we sort of knew a little bit on the side as well. He used to come away to the race meetings and help Ross out, and he just wanted to be a silent partner and get involved. So it was really Jamie, myself, and Ross ran it, and Michael was a silent partner,
And this was at a period in later 2000 that this all happened. So you guys go and commit then to building this new car for 2001, but a whole pile of really big ticket stuff happens in V8 Supercars late in 2000, and you're a forgotten element of this, but I want to bring this back up because, and we'll get to later in 2001 because there's plenty of big topics there as well, but Craig Lowndes is kind of the story of 2000. It's confirmed he's going to leave HRT. Where's he going to go? Finally, it's revealed that he goes to Ford on a big buck deal to go to Gibson's, who are going to swap from Holden to Ford. Gary Dumbrell's going to sell out. Fred Gibson's going to buy back in, although we later learned it was actually Bob Forbes doing the buy-in. So then that meant that there was a shift of drivers. Murph goes to Kmart, which is a new team at Walkinshaws. Stephen Richards lands with Glenn Seaton at Ford Tickford Racing in a seat because Neil Crompton had left. But how close was it? And you were in the mix for that FTR drive. How close was that to you being the guy in car number 6 and not Stephen Richards that year? Because I remember at the time, you, Canto, there was a pile of names, but how close did that get?
Well, we went down, Ross Dillon and myself flew down to Melbourne to see Glenn, sat down, I think we saw him at a cafe or a restaurant or whatever, and had a coffee and talked to him about the whole deal. And he actually produced a contract there and then. And we came to a deal, came to a wage or something, and holy shit, I'm going to actually get paid to drive this car, as well as being a competitive, fully fledged Ford factory team, you know. And we got the contract, signed it, shook hands, all really good. Rang Gina, flying home, jump on the plane, fly home. By the time I land in Brisbane, someone rings me and says, Steve Richards has signed a deal, he's driving for Ford. So I was 2.5 hours later from signing a contract, and Glenn was going to sign it, get his people to sign it and post the copy up to me. I hear that it didn't happen, so he might have a few contracts signed with people, or I don't know what happened, but I was hours away, you know, and that was a bit depressing, I think. But that also, I think, made it a bit harder, and wanting to beat them and race a bit harder with those guys, you know, and prove that we can do it. So it wasn't great at the time, but it is what it is, and we wouldn't have probably got to where we were if I went that way too. You know, I could have driven for him 1 year, and that was the end of it. But we went on a few more years with our own team and with some other teams, so it was good. But it was dangerously close for sure.
So you were prepared to? I mean, you'd only just done this Paragon thing, but an opportunity of a full-time drive with, you know, a team that had, you know, Glenn had won the championship a few years earlier. It's a Ford-backed team. The partners were clearly all behind you going after this.
No, we talked about it. We, you know, when it came up, because Ross was a partner with me, and he came down. He came to the meeting. You know, we were going to then lease a drive in that car to someone, you know, at the potential, and we organised it because Greenfield still built that car. You know, they owned it, and they were good with that too. And it would have been probably the next step for a team. You know, like not having an owner driving the car. And then in Paragon too, it was never going to be me drive it forever. We were going to organise to try to build it into something, you know, bigger and better, and run. Even when Dad had the team, he started building cars for Rod Salmon, doing a bit of stuff for other people as well. You know, when we had before it was Paragon, but our ultimate plan would have been to have, you know, one car run with a driver paying, and then another car possibly, and you know, and me sort of being in the managerial side of it. But if we had to go, if I got the gig at Cedos, I would have. If I went, we would have just moved all that forward a little bit, you know.
Yeah,
it was all amicable.
Is that the greatest gut punch of your career? To, you know, that 2-hour flight from Melbourne to Brisbane to think, hey, I'm making it as a full-time V8 supercar driver, and then you're not.
Yeah, I was on the top of the world. Then I was lying in the gutter. You know, it was a bit sad, but it was devastating, really. But you know, it would have been a good income and a good drive. You know, when Steve Richards, I still remember him winning that reverse grid race at Canberra and thinking, mate, that could have been me. You know, and then you know, it would have been fantastic. It could have helped Paragon. We could have got someone in there with a bit of a budget, and away we went. And everything was going to fall into place pretty good, you know. And then it didn't. And we just went. But all we did is really, it wasn't that bad, really. All we did is went back to where we were 2 months earlier and just pressed on with the original program and got it done, you know. So don't talk about it, just move on and get it done.
Yeah, I think the old Dick Johnson line, the only thing you get from looking backwards is the sore neck. And in 2000, you had gone and driven for DJR in the Enduros with Stevie Johnson. I think you finished 4th at Bathurst and started on the front row. And then in 01, so this is, you know, mid Greenfield Mowers racing and then Paragon, you went back and did Bathurst with them with Greg Ritter because they parted ways with Paul Stokel after Queensland. Of course, we'll talk about Queensland in a moment because you had something else going on that weekend. But you clearly built a really nice rapport with DJR because you kept going and driving for them, which clearly those opportunities, you know, your Paragon guys went, hey, look, if you get a co-drive for those big races, you take it and we'll park ours, because you didn't have to run your car at all those rounds from memory because you were level 2. Yeah,
level 2 franchise. I only had to do 6 rounds or something out of the, and none of the marquee rounds either. It didn't say you had to go to Bathurst or the Sandown 500 or the GP or anything like that. Yeah. So I think I ran the Queensland 500 with DJR in 2000, and then ran with Dick in 2000 Bathurst, which I think that's a race we actually could have won. That's another one I wake up in the middle of the night crying in my pillow. And we should have. He said stay out, and I should have come in when we got the wets. But anyway, that's another long story. But Dick had a helicopter flying around. Everything was going good. He had the Channel 9 chopper telling him what the weather's doing, seeing everywhere. And they was pit, and someone in the pit bay said, "No, stay out." And Stephen, I think we stayed out and did another lap. Everyone else pitted, but it put us back to about 9th. And then well, the car was fast. So when we brought in, we were leading. And Stephen drove the thing back to 4th with another 10 laps. He probably would have drove to the front. The thing was a missile, and it was really good. But it got away from us that year. But we certainly went back and drove with Dick a few times, and obviously started building a relationship from '99 when we got that EL off him. Yeah.
And you got some really solid results. I mean, you and Greg Ritter finished 4th in 01 and were right in fighting with Scaife in the late stages there. So there's a couple of those races where, and everyone's got these stories, if it just goes a different way, but you got to be in it. I think you should look back on, as much as it's easy for a driver to look back and go, I didn't win that one or I didn't get on that podium. The fact that you were just in the fight is actually 9/10 of the whole thing just to be there, let alone actually get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to race your way. They always just say it every year on the telecast. You got to race your way into the last 30 laps, or whatever the fuel tank capacity is now. But it used to be 28 laps back then, and even 28 laps. If you're all lined up on a safety car, full tanks of fuel, and everything's half worn out. That's still a big race, around Bathurst. 28 laps would be considered nearly a mini enduro, So to get yourself in the car, get the drive, get to the track, not have a horrible weekend, get yourself into the last hour of the race with a chance to win it's a massive achievement itself for anyone who's there on that lead lap with half a shot,
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Not even the drivers, but the crews and the spot, everyone, right back to the factory guys in the factory, building the thing.
Yeah. It's a big mission.
Yeah.
So we just mentioned 2001 with you and Greg, and actually you and Greg have a bit of a history that rolls on a bit later. We'll get to that soon.
Yeah.
But let's deal with the Queensland 500 in 2001. It's a difficult, weird, strange type of topic, but in essence, you're driving with Neil Bates in the VIP pet food / Greenfield Falcon, and then you're not. The car gets carted away from the track. There's an injunction placed upon it in a court in Brisbane, and you're not racing, and there's a massive drama. What's the background? How did it come to be that it got to this point? Because it wasn't the first time, that I've got to tell you, that a car was taken away at Queensland Raceway mid-race weekend, because I was standing there a few years later when Terry Wyhoon had a car that the police came to actually talk to him about. Separate topic, but same racetrack some years on. But what happened in that whole 2001 thing? Because it was really weird.
Well, because we took over as Paragon Motorsport, and basically Greenfield had before that, it was their car, their sponsorship, everything was yellow, all that side of it. So it was all not their way, but that's how it was, and that was fine, that was the deal. But this year we talked to him and said we had a contract with Greenfield that we were allowed to put sponsorship here, and here on the car, and with the view of getting they supplied the car for that sponsorship, and we were with the view of getting other sponsors to pay for the running and of the car, and that was all. We had Greenfield down the side, we had Greenfield on the bonnet and everywhere. And we end up, Jamie Blakey ended up talking to Tony Quinn. And Quinny came along and gave us a few bucks, and we put VIP on the bonnet, and I think we put on the sides. And then that was Friday. I was still at the workshop fixing cars, doing stuff, because I'd done a few laps around Willowbank in that car, so I knew the groove, sort of. I wasn't going to get any quicker by going and do another 20 laps on Friday. So Neil Bates was customising himself with the car and the team. He was running around out there. Doing a good job, and I got a phone call from Roscoe. He said, don't bother coming out here, the car's been towed away by the sheriff. And I went, what do you mean? It's towed away. And then,
did you think it was a gag?
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't. Yeah, exactly. Who is this really? What's going on, and then I found out he was deadly serious. And because we had the VIP on the car, I think Theo must have forgotten what the contract said and didn't like it, and rang up and said they're breaking the contract. And I think as soon as you put an injunction, whether it's right or wrong on something, it gets towed away until it's sorted out. So, and unfortunately, the people that know the facts, both Jamie and Theo, and they've both passed away now. Rest in peace, fellas. But they've both passed away now, so we'll probably never really get the nitty-gritty truth out of it ever. But the car got an injunction on it, towed away. Then we had to go to court because we had a contract with them to run their car for the whole season. After that, we got the car back and we were allowed to run it for the rest of the year. And we had to return the car in the condition that it was fully serviced, maintained, and as it was sort of built, And we did all that. And I think there was a bit of a payout on because with Tony Quinn, it was a toe in the water for him. It was a VIP Queensland 500 too. Like it was
correct.
Car, and his car got away. So I thought, that's done. Another sponsor that hates motorsport will never come back. But he was really good. We had a deal to run for the rest of the year, and he gave us some money. So we were right in our court appeal saying we had a sponsor that was having a toe in the water at Queensland 500, going to run with us the rest of the year in a view of running next year. And then, as we know, in 2002, we had a black VIP car. So Tony everything we said that was going to happen happened, and we were right, And but Greenfield got the car back. It was all no harm, no foul. It was pretty disappointing for the Queensland 500 because once again it's a local race for us, and it was just. It was actually that was actually quite devastating too. It's a bit like the Glenn Seaton thing,
And that's all in the space of 9 months or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So it's not long after the whole Seaton thing happens.
Yeah, that's right. It was a pretty tough it was a great year because once again to own your own V8 Supercar team, which was something we never even thought about it happening or planned it or thought it was possible, and I did, So. We did. That was a great part of the year, but we also got knocked back on a contract with FPR or FTR, wasn't it back then? I don't know. GSR, Glen Seaton Racing.
Yep.
And then lost the car. Once we lost the car at Willowbank, I thought that was it. We didn't have a car. Without a car, you're not much of a race team, are you? But we got it back.
Why did it? And maybe these answers aren't there, but. For teams and sponsors have issues all the time with, hey, our sticker's not in the right spot or it's not big enough or whatever. Why did that escalate from why wasn't that a phone call to go, hey, could you just move that, or hey, we don't think that's how it should be? It's a pretty large leap to slap an injunction and get the car towed. Wow.
It's the logo police we used to call them. That's the wrong blue, that's the wrong colour. The R's too big in Greenfield, and that's fine, and that's all the conversation. But I think it's the same deal. Jamie was sort of running the team, that side of it, and Theo was running the Greenfield side. And like I said, unfortunately they're both no longer with us. And it might have been a phone call and blew up, or it might have just been a phone call to the solicitor. But I don't know. I actually don't know how it went from 0 to 100 mile an hour that quick, and it happened pretty quick. Like it was like, I think they've called Neil Bates in because the police, come in, park the car, get out, tow it away.
Wow.
It was. I wasn't at the track and I wasn't privy to any of the phone calls, and if I knew, I'd tell you, but I just don't really know how it'll happen. I didn't go to the court either. Roscoe handled all that stuff. That was much more up his alley, and I just went back to work and did my thing and worked at Paragon. I didn't work at Paragon that year. The next year I took a year off our own business and got a guy to run it and work. That's another story. But that year I was still working at the Everton Hills workshop while we were running Paragon Motorsport with the Greenfield sponsorship and then the VIP sponsorship.
It's now that we've sat here and sort of spelled out the timeline, you go from basically, I think the Paragon deal was late 2000. So in a 12-month period, you go from mortgaging your home, putting together this deal with some guys to take over a V8 Supercar team, thinking that you are now going to get a drive at one of the top teams and then not getting the drive, getting your car towed away at a major race that your new sponsor is sponsoring, ending up landing, though, in a drive with a Queensland racing legend for Bathurst and, doing everything but finishing on the podium, finishing off the year in this car that's not yours, that's going to have to be handed back at the end of the year. Fair to say, mate, a little bit going on. 01's probably got to stand, when you summarise it that way, as a crazy year in your motor racing life.
It was a pretty big roller coaster ride, that's for sure. It's and the harder you work, the luckier you get, the harder you work. And there was plenty going on all year. Like you'd finish at Everton Hills and then you'd be over at Brendale with the race team doing stuff, loading cars and pit stop practice, and it was fantastic. I would change a few bits, so don't get me wrong, but as a whole, I wouldn't change it for anything. We got there and just got to head down, bum up, and keep going. And we all had our areas of expertise. Jamie was doing his bit, Ross was doing his bit, I was doing my bit with the cars, and had a fair bit to do with maintaining and bolting together, doing diffs and gearbox. I did a lot of the work on the car as well. Sub-assembly, we call it, the Hollingers and the 9-inch diffs and the uprights and bits and pieces. I did a lot of that stuff, and just squeeze that in there as well. And there's no time to do anything else, that's for sure.
To put the full stop on the loop there, with the Seaton deal, was that just a case, was there anything in the aftermath of that, or was it kind of, well, what can we do here? I mean, it's not like there's an executed contract that we can take to the courts. There's an intent to do something that changed at the last minute. Do we just get angry and yell at the phone, or do we just walk away? Or
no, I think I talked to him, but at the end of the day, it's only a contract if both people sign it. It's just a bit of paper if one signed it, and he's got to do what he's got to do. Look at my year. He might have been having a similar year in a different way. Who knows? And to get Steve, it's why wouldn't he? He's nothing wrong with the way Steve drives or carries himself about town. He's a good guy, And Glenn just obviously decided that was a better option for him to go that way, and good luck to him. I talked to him after that. I've seen him at the track. He was involved in the franchise thing when we got that all sort of turned around. So it was disappointing, but it wasn't. I didn't chuckle the toys out of the pram and carry on. It is what it is. Like I said, and we just went back to our own program and got on with that. And then that was nearly torn out from under us as well.
Yeah, and that was that had its own storyline. But I mean the next year, which was the last year of Paragon, was 02. So Tony Quinn comes on board as a full-time sponsor. The white car becomes a black car. It's the old Budweiser prancing horse car because you didn't have a car, so you had to get a car. I guess this car needed am I right in remembering that was a heavy car that needed a bit of a Jenny Craig diet?
Yep, absolutely. And on that white car, before we jump onto the black car, the white car, which was a Greenfield car, it came up for sale a few years ago, and I actually managed to snap it up and it's sitting in my shed, which we can go over later. But
I was going to ask you about that, but you beat me to it. You're going to have to press on with the topic now. You're going to have to tell me more.
Yeah, well, a guy, Adam Peasley, who used to work for Mark McLaughlin out there at Power Talk Engines, he used to come away and maintain the engines for us at the race meetings, and I got through the dirt track and out at Willowbank with the kids, a guy saying to me, my father-in-law's got one of your old cars. And I said, oh, yeah, right. Well, no worries. What is it? I think it's like an old Fiat or an Alpha or something. And he said, oh, no, it's no U Falcon from 2001. I went, oh, right. And I worked it out later. It was, by talking to you, I worked it out that it was actually the right car with the chassis number and got all the details. And went and had a look at it, took Adam round, and we sort of parked around the corner with a car trailer and 2 utes and went and talked to him and left them around the corner, and he told us what he wanted. We worked out it was the right car, and we snapped it up. So now it's all back in the 2001 Greenfield livery. It's got all the Greenfield on it, everything on it. We put it back together. I've got a motor there from DJR to put in it, which I haven't put it all together. We were looking at doing the V8 touring car early 2000, but then COVID hit, so it's all been sort of stockpiled since then and not put together. But I don't think I didn't win the war or win the battle with the white car and end up owning it eventually, but it's a nice thing back because it's not about that. It's the only car that Paragon and we as a team built, and it's pretty cool to have it sitting in my shed, So it's quite good. Good thing to walk past on Bathurst Day and have a look at.
Was there a temptation to put it into the Queensland Raceway livery that it never got to race in?
It's got VOP on the bonnet and Greenfield on the sides, but
You got the best of both worlds then.
yeah, I sort of split it. I sort of tried to be a bit, I suppose it's a leg on each side of the fence, isn't it? But
bit neutral.
Yeah, neutral ground. That's right. So it can be taken to the track and no one says anything. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, but the black car in 2002 was prancing horse. The motors were built by Penske in the States for some reason, and they were. I think they were built with the heads for NASCARs and things like that, where it was all a bit, they all run to 10,000 revs over there. The rules are a bit different. So we ended up tidying up. It did need a big diet. It was heavy. Just had a lot of stuff bolted in it and a lot of heavy pipes. And I'm not sure it was a BHAG. I think they built that car in-house down there. But we got it going. We managed to do a full year in 2002 with the car. We did every round. And it was a slow start, but we got a few decent results. Bathurst, I think we came 8th in our own car, which is pretty good. Like I said, run a V8 Supercar at Bathurst with your own team and get in the top 10. That's a good, especially in that field. I think you look at those fields of those years with Larkham's, Longhurst, Joneses, Scaves, Ingalls, Tanders, Murphys, bloody, you go on and on. Ambrose, Kelly's, they all come and go, but there's probably 20 guys there that win that race, 20 cars, on their day. So, but the black car was a bit of a battle, but it was still a good thing. It was our car, and we ran it, mate. We did what we could with it. We ran as fast and as often as we could. And
I think it was just after Bathurst where you and Tony Scott had finished 8th. I think you're the last car in the lead lap from memory.
Yeah.
The announcement came out that you're out. Like, this is it. And one of the things I remember at the time was that after Bathurst, I think if you go back through and watch that whole race in its entirety, blink and you'll miss any spotting or mention of your car. And not to say it was a deliberate ploy by Channel 10 to avoid you. It's just that and I understand it very well, that storylines happen in races and there's things going on and, not everything and everyone can be covered. But I guess over the course of it, and particularly reading Tony Quinn's book in the aftermath of what he's had happen in his world, at the time he was growing VIP, and absolutely crucial was getting TV time and getting that logo and getting that car on air. And he would have looked at how much it cost to, and you could probably remember how much it cost that he spent sponsorship-wise, and the return of how often he's on telly, clearly in his mind, didn't line up.
Oh, no, I think we worked out we had 11 seconds that day, and you say it wasn't a ploy by Channel 10. I don't think it was Channel 10. But when you turn up and Murray's Corner's VIP Pet Foods Corner and all the V8 Supercar officials have got VIP Pet Foods on their sleeve, and we get no TV, you haven't got to be Albert Einstein to work out what's going on, where the money's going. And it's not Tony at all. It's got to rip a deal. Tony loves a deal. And he still offered us money to run next year too, the same deal. So it wasn't. We got through that. We got through that Bathurst thing, but we certainly didn't get any TV time at all. And it was definitely a problem, for Quinny. We had to talk him around, and luckily enough, he's had ups and downs, and he knows the deal. And it was a bad deal, the television we got, but. At least we got a result. I don't know why we didn't get the TV. It wasn't good. It probably didn't change a lot, but it was a bit disappointing. And even the people that have helped you at home and stuff, like and the wives and kids and friends and all that, that we are there. What happened? You might see it pop up once every hour on the leaderboard. So, but yeah, there's definitely something going on. And then with V8 and Larko he was sniffing around, which I don't think he would have done anything. He's a good guy, but. He was sniffing around with a bit of VIP on his car too, So the money was there sort of for the next year contract, and maybe V8 Supercars looking for it too,
Which has been a scenario over the years where, and let's not forget that at the time IMG were the promoter of the Bathurst 1000, but obviously Avesco were running the championship. So there's always been that element where there's teams competing for sponsorship money against, in some instances, sometimes, and it still happens, supercars, which is just the way of the kind of commercial world.
Yeah.
But it is an awkward situation where the championship's competing for dollars with some of the teams. But had it been decided then between all the partners that this was just getting too hard basket? From memory, so you've got a sponsor that's keen, you've talked him around to go again, you've got an order for a BA Falcon, which is the new model car.
Yep.
What's the clinching moment or element to the decision to pull up stumps and depart this thing?
Well, I think you'd know the timeline better, but I know John Briggs, Ross Dillon, I think Trevor Ashby and a couple other guys, Paul Morris and stuff, were onto the franchise thing. That was where they went from being, you could turn up what you rung is what you brung. If you're fastest 32, you ran in the race, But then the franchise thing came in level 1 and 2 and they got limited. And your 50 grand franchise tenfolded in price as soon as they got ticked off, And then David Thexton came over from New Zealand, wanted to buy a race team. And we had spent more money than we had, and I was a 40% shareholder in Paragon by that stage. And Ross was putting in a fair bit of money, and every 100 he put in was 40 I had to find, which we didn't have. So we got to a point where we knew how far behind we were, and Quinny was going to sponsor us, but the sponsorship, we couldn't do him justice because we'd have to use some of his sponsorship money to pay for last year's, which wouldn't happen. He'd know. We wouldn't do that to him, and he'd know what's going on. We had to pay that, but then get the money from Tony, and we knew what we got from Tony the year before, and it was getting dearer, so it wasn't enough money to run the full year anyway. So we figured we would have been, unless we got another really good sponsor, which is hard to do when the whole car's covered in VIP, which is okay. We would be behind again, and by more, and probably couldn't fund it. Just didn't have the money to fund it. Level 2. I'm not sure of the figures, but it might be 250 grand level 2 got for the year to run, and level 1 got 700, say, for a figure. Don't quote me on that, but with level 1 money, you could have a sponsor and run the car. Level 2, you had the same sponsor, you didn't have enough money to run the cars, And David Dixon came from New Zealand. He just sold a big orange juice company or something to Coca-Cola and had a heap of cash, and he wanted a team. And we talked about it, and it got us out of the hole. It was a lot more than we paid for it. And there's the keys. Good luck and goodbye. And we Bruce Partington and myself, we spent a fair bit of time with David after that. The next year, he had the BA. I think he ended up getting the BA we ordered, and we went around and tried to do some driver coaching and help him out. But it was a difficult task to get him up to speed, and pre-qualifying was a thing then, I think, as well. And I think the fastest 25 might have gone straight in, and the rest had to pre-qualify, and it was hard for him to get into the thing. But we basically, it was a walk in at the end of 2002, and it was a sad day.
I was going to say, how did that make you feel? I mean, this has basically been 2 and a bit years from buying it to selling it, which is kind of, I'm sure, not the intent, but was kind of a case of, well, let's cut our losses now before that we have bigger losses, and this one really starts to financially hurt at home and in other ways.
Well, with the increase of the franchise prices, it sort of covered all our internal debt, and squared everything up, and we could get out and pay off the mortgage that I remortgaged all those years ago, and do a few things, and and David had he changed a lot, had a lot more money, he had a pretty good setup there. He just needed us. I probably hung around helping him out, sniffing around, thinking maybe it might work out, but he's not fast enough, and that's no secret. Lap times don't lie, and he might say, well, maybe you should have a steer again, and but that never eventuated. He was determined, and he wanted to stay there. But it was 2.5 years of a roller coaster up and down, and but like I said, mate, I wouldn't change it. We got, it was really good, really hard, and sometimes really enjoyable at others. So and really rewarding as well. When you got a good result, you worked hard for that result. There was no easy ride in those V8 races.
It's a bit of a life journey, isn't it? And I'm sure there's learnings from all of that stuff that you've used since in all sorts of other parts of life. But
I'd go back another crack tomorrow.
Yeah. sucker for it. So you kind of become a bit of a gun for hire, mate, after that. I'm presuming that any full-time supercar opportunities aren't really presenting themselves, and if there were, you should tell me now. Were there any that we didn't know about?
No, not really. I think it was all, like I said, I think, when I started in 98, I was 31 when I drove Gary Rogers' car, and then, in 2002, whatever that works out to be, no one's going to hire a 40-something-year-old. Nearly has been, but for Bathurst and stuff, it's a different thing, and you need someone who's solid and consistent, and 80% of the race for 80% of the speed for 80% of the race. Back in the day, it's a bit different now. It's a sprint, But drove for all the good teams. Spent a lot, drove with the Brabhams and Johnsons and Ritters and Tanders and a lot of good stuff, and. It was probably 07, I think, was the last one I did. And I managed to jam in a bit of New Zealand touring car in there as well, which was a great time.
So, I was going to say, a lot of people probably forget too, mate, that 03 year where Thexton's taken over and running that team, the year that Greg Murphy sets the lap of the God's time. Oh. You're a Kmart driver too. You're in the other car with Andy Prio, which I think a lot of people forget because it was a 1 year thing that you were with that team. But that's as close to a HRT car that you're kind of going to get. It's pretty much the same thing from the Clayton Business Park in Melbourne. So that's a huge cool thing. But everyone kind of forgets McLean driving for Kmart because Murph went and lobbed that lap that we're still talking about.
Yeah, we didn't drive for that long either. Unfortunately, it was all over by the end of turn one, lap one. But when I drove that car in practice the first time, I did a couple of laps, sort of got up to speed a bit with it because it was a completely different thing. The first, car compared to the Falcons, and come down Conrod up over the last crest, and it started missing. And I'll go on the radio. So I pushed the radio button. I went, it's blown up. And I went, it's on the rev limiter. Like, we never got the rev limiter. This thing's on the rev limiter like 300 metres before we holy shit. It is a jet. And it was, they were quick in a straight line, but they were good everywhere, those cars, obviously by the lap time Murph did, which is a cracking lap, and I talked to Rob Crawford about it all. He said, mate, we get a certain engine budget. We run the cheap ones at Winton and certain places, and Phillip Island and Bathurst, we lash out and get the real deal. And mate, I can tell you it was the real deal, that's for sure.
Hey, you mentioned that race didn't last long. I think there was a collision at turn one with Steve Owen in the Smith's Trucks car from memory. So that's probably your shortest Bathurst 1000 of all of them.
5 gear changes, I think. Show, like, went off the start, and I think Steve went out a bit wide on the went out in the grass and came back on the track out of turn one, and everyone's in the pack. I think we qualified badly. We were probably 20th or something there, maybe 15th, and in the race at that in the stage, and couldn't move over, couldn't go anywhere, and he punched me in the back right wheel and turned me into the fence, and probably pulling fourth gear there at that stage, I think. And you don't realise, but it's probably 170 kilometres an hour, 160 kilometres an hour or something, and it fair destroyed the car. And I drove it back with 1 or 2 inflated tyres. I think we're doing 190 k's down Conrod. That's because it doesn't seem that fast when you're normally doing 290. But his race was over too, so it was a bad day for both of us. That was actually disappointing. And I think when we raced for him raced at Sandown, it was raining, and we sort of had to follow Murph and Rick's lead because they got pit priority. So if it rained, we had to wait for 2 laps. So that was a pretty average weekend too. We were nowhere there, but that was probably the lowest point of my Bathurst racing, was not finishing because of the incident in turn one. That's everything you want to try and avoid at Bathurst.
When I look back through your career stats, your best V8 supercar finish is a second, and it was with Russell Ingall. So we talked about these big teams that saw the value in what you brought. I mean, DJR we talked about already quite a lot. Kmart Racing, Ford Performance Racing, Stone Brothers right in the middle of their championship winning three-peat with 2 for Marcus, 1 for Russell. They ring you up and get you on board. I mean, you drove for some of the best teams at the times that they were at their best, which is made a huge feather in your cap.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. I just, but you're right. Murph's the fastest car in Australia at that time at Kmart and SBR. SBR were great. Ross and Jimmy, it was really a really good experience. Like they involved everyone. They're a big family team. That's probably what we would have loved to have been. But when Gina came away racing with us Bathurst and Sandown, Ross's wife, Gina's hanging around the pits not doing much, and Ross's wife goes, "Oh mate, we're selling plenty of merchandise," because obviously they're winning everything. I said, "Do you want to come with us?" So Gina's off, helping sell merchandise and cooking the snags, and they really involve you. And we went down one time to do drive. The Atlas are about an hour from my place where we are here, where they were based then, and went down to do some driver change practice with Russell. And the boys were actually had the car on the hoist. They were still finishing it, putting the gearbox in, and they were struggling with something. I've been a mechanic my whole life, and I dove under there and gave him a hand, held at the back of the gearbox or something, and Russell walks in and goes, "What's he doing under there?" And Jimmy Stone walks in after him and goes, "Mate, it doesn't matter. He can't see the bits that make it go fast." And I left it, righto. I went there. So after we jumped in the other car for 3 hours, I got out and it looked like I'd been beaten up, jumping over those roll cages, and we would have done 1,000 driver changes that day. But it was good. The cars were hard to drive. Marcus sets them up in a certain way, and Russell's the same. And they were completely different. You think all these cars, they're all built with the same set of rules, and they're just such a different. The Radisich, when I drove with DJR, they had a completely different way of driving around Willowbank to anyone else, and everyone cottoned on because they were that quick. But the Stone Brother cars were quite different to drive. Very pointy, very nervous in the back, and you just had to get around it. It took me a while, but we eventually got there, and I think we finished second at Sandown, and we would have won because Ritter fired off in Marcus's car, and I come around turn one, and he was just coming back onto the track, and it was a safety car, and it was 6 seconds, I reckon, in between
from being a lap down.
Yeah, from him being behind us and us winning the race, because they had team orders, and once again I brought that car. I think at Sandown we brought that Russell's car back in the lead. So I was lucky enough to lead Bathurst a couple of times, and Queensland 500 and Sandown, and there's some big ticket races there, and they're pretty chuffed with that. I would love to tell the story, but I go back a few years to DJR when we passed, I don't know if it was Steve Richards, whoever it was, up Mountain Straight, and led in the shell car across the top of the mountain and down Conrod and onto Pit Straight. We turn onto Pit Straight, pull third gear, and I thought this thing's just blown up. What's going on with this car? And it took me a little while to work out, but it was actually the crowd cheering on the side of the track. You could hear them over the car that a Ford had overtaken Holden and was leading Bathurst, and I went, holy dude, that is cool. Tightened up the belts and put my head down and away we went. Never forget that. It was a great feeling.
That's very cool. Hey, something that I remember that wasn't cool, and this has probably got to be surely the biggest accident of your career. And look, I don't remember you being in many crashes over the journey, but while you were doing enduros and you did a couple of years with FPR, by the way, why didn't the Stone Brothers thing go on for the next year? Did FPR pay you more money, or what was the go there?
No, it wasn't that. Ross actually come and saw me. I talked to him, and he said Ford have their new program was young drivers, 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, and as a co-drivers, I know Russell and Marcus had a contract. No one really knows how old Russell Ingall ever was or ever will be, but so and that was the story I got, and I believe him. I think he was a pretty straight shooter, Ross. He's a good guy, and he said they're looking at you getting younger co-drivers, and we're going to have to not sign you up again. We were talking about doing it again. It was all go, and then they got the word from Ford. So that was the story I got. It was an age thing, so that's a bit disappointing, but it was what it was.
I was going to say you can't adjust your birth certificate, but there's been a few racing drivers who've tried that over the journey, and a few that have been quite successful for a long time. But so a deal goes. Actually, you and Greg Ritter get back together in 2005, but as part of getting ready to stay racing and keep yourself up and going for the enduros, in 2004 you did the development series. I remember with Howard's team, Mark Howard's team, and then in 2005 you went Porsche Carrera Cup racing, but a lot of people remember the Jason Richards rollover at Queensland Raceway that year, but the previous day, pretty much identical situation on the exit of that turn 3 where that big curb was sitting with that link road. You tripped over that too, and I think that Carrera Cup car's still rolling down the road. I mean, that went for ages. That's got to be the biggest crash of your career by a mile.
Absolutely. I've rolled cars over before, but only gentle rollovers, like in gravel traps. Nothing like that. And and I can still remember it. Like, you could almost go through the crash, bang, thud, flap, smash, whatever's happening. And I remember sitting in the car and like the right hand door opens and shuts and then flies off and watching it. And then I got one hand because I was right on a gear change. It was third to fourth, and my right hand came off the gear lever. And the only thing that really happened to me was my shoulder got all sort of a bit torn up and from flailing around, not being able to hold on to anything. And my eyes were blood red, like not bloodshot, but blood red, like burgundy colour, blood colour, And but the car was just flying apart, disintegrating around. I remember seeing the front bar and the fuel tank fly out of it. And the steering wheel was not round in front of me; it was like north-south round that way from trying to tear it out of the thing. But I just remember thinking as it's going over, I'm running out of car. This has got to stop soon. And then it actually did stop. It did stop on its roof, I thought, and I went for the belts, and then it rolled over onto its side again, kept going. I thought, oh my God, it's going to go again, my brother and my father were standing on the pit wall. Jace was working on the Porsche for me, and Dad was working for maybe 888 then. I can't remember who it was, but and neither of them said anything when that car was lying on its side, and my little head popped out like one of them funny little, what are those things called, jump out of the
meerkats,
ground?
like a little meerkat popping out the side.
A little meerkat jumped out, and my old man just put his hand on my brother's hand, as I say, thank God for that, he's alive, because it was probably, well, who knows? And the car afterwards, Porsche changed it next year, but they had the standard pressed metal spot welded in seat mounts in it, and you could grab the seat and just wobble it around with your two fingers. The seat was about to tear out of the floor. And they kept me in the medical centre for probably an hour and a half, blood pressure, blood, everything, and just saying, "Are you sure you're all right?" I said, I actually feel good. I'm not too bad, a bit shaken up, but I'm not nowhere sore, I didn't get anything broken or whatever. So, it was a massive crash, and it was on, my cousin lives in England. She rang me and said, "Are you all right?" Saw it on the news over there. The Kiwi guys I was running the car for in New Zealand, Tony Richards Motorsport, they all rang me and said, "You're all right?" And it was on every news channel. I went and apologised to Mike Stern. I said, "I'm so sorry, mate, about that car. It's all destroyed." And Rodney served me up, and that's what it was. And he said, "Oh, mate, we've talked to the marketing guys. We have got millions and millions of dollars worth of. We'll get another car. Don't worry about it. As long as you're all right, which was good of him." And at school with the kids, they were 05. I don't know how old they were. They were in primary school. They were superstars because their dad.
Well, there's silver linings of all sorts of grey clouds, isn't there? Sometimes.
Absolutely.
So,
got to look hard enough.
Yeah, correct. You've got to find that stuff. So we're nearly at the end of your pro career. FPR, they got you back actually. So in 2006. David Brabham couldn't come for Sandown, so they put you back with Greg Ritter. What was it with you and Ritter? I guess you guys must have got along because you kept on getting back together.
Yeah, we'd sort of drive the car, I think, and they'd say we'd do what they expect. There's a certain, obviously, a time and a fast is better, of course, but we never really. Well, we had a few crashes, but nothing major. But I don't know whether Greg put my name forward or what, but we certainly drove probably 3-4. We drove at Gary Rogers as well, I think, but that's another story. And FPR and DJR, and we both liked the car the same way. Wasn't the setup was, we drive what we're given sort of thing, not try to re-engineer the wheel. And probably maybe easier to get. We certainly got on together, no worries. We're not best mates or anything, but as far as the idea of how we go racing and how we want the car and what we need in the car and the ergonomics of the seat and all that sort of stuff, we were very similar. So, and that's probably it is obviously an important thing in an endurance race because it only takes one cramp and your day's over. You've got to come in for an unscheduled stop or something. So, but we had a few good results together. We can't complain.
No, you did, and that leads me to your last run. So you bookended your Bathurst V8 career with Gary Rogers Motorsport, so they got you back in 07 to drive with Greg. Am I right in remembering that when you went to that year's Bathurst 1000, you went knowing that was definitely going to be your last one?
Yeah, I'd pretty much I didn't think I'd drive there, and I got the call, so we went down and drove with Greg for Gary Rogers, and I actually said to Gina and the kids, so don't come down. We're in the second car. It's going to get all the not the car's bad, but we're up against it. We're not going to win the thing. It's all pretty good. The kids were young. It's all happening at home, and why don't and then we're running around the race. We're running, I think, in the top 10, sort of on the lead lap, not going too bad. And then it rained and we came in and put wets on. And that was the biggest problem, nearly the biggest problem my whole life. I told Gina to stay home and we put the wets on and the safety car went back in. And I remember Greg getting up to third or fourth and I'm going, I'm going to die when I get home. He's going to win this race and I'm going to die. She's going to kill me. Yeah.
Well, I remember it vividly because I was wandering the pit lane as a very younger version doing the Channel 7 TV. And if you go back and watch that race, I think he gets to 8th or 9th, but you don't quite see him pop up on the screen. But watching the timing screens and what was going on in the pit lane, it's really clear. It wasn't a case of, like, if that rain, I mean, it sprinkled, but and enough to make everyone tippy-toe, but not quite enough to get past that crossover lap time where the wet weather tyre was faster than a hot slick. But if it rained that little bit more, he was the only one on the wet weather tyre. It wasn't like there was one of 5 and he would have to race 5 other guys. He would have just picked them off one by one and you guys would have won that race without trying because everyone would have needed to pit.
Absolutely, mate. It was one more minute of rain, we would have won that race easily, and well, not easily. We would have won that race, and as soon as I'll never forget, there was a helicopter shot of pit straight, and there was a little dry line coming out of last corner down the pit straight into turn 1. I went, oh, that's it, we're buggered. Yeah, as soon as the dry line, you put that slick on there, you're away. You picked that pace up, but we gave it a fair crack. Get in there and put the wets on. We've got nothing to lose. We weren't going to win if we stayed where we were. So.
I remember bumping into you at the pub on the Sunday night, it was not unlike any of us in that period where we all seemed to have more time to do that stuff. But it was a case of and look, life and racing are full of what ifs and if this went that way and all that stuff. But that's one of the ones that sticks in my brain as. That would have been the biggest boil over in Bathurst history. And, not knowing the backstory now, you would have been the most unpopular husband in the history of unpopular husbands. Yeah,
I should have stayed at Bathurst then, I think. And the plasterer and the mechanic, who are these guys? Where'd they come from? So
it's the ultimate story. Did you get to the end of that race and think, all right, that was we went all right. I'm confident and I'm comfortable in what I've done. I'm not going to go looking for a drive next year. I've got kids. I've got a business. I've got stuff to do. Is that kind of where you got to in your, let's call it your pro racing period?
Yeah, it was actually. I sort of called it by then because it wasn't as easy as it was, and I actually felt like I did my fastest lap I've ever done around Bathurst that week. I think it was an 8 something or other, which when we went there the first time, there was nothing like that, So that, I still proved to myself that I could go fast, or if you want to call it that, But I actually found my eyes going from the dashboard to the outside, so across the top of the mountain or something or other. It might be a millisecond where it just takes you a second to refocus, and I thought, this is not ideal, And as soon as you feel uncomfortable about anything, doing that, there's too much to lose, not enough to gain, and you've got to stand up and say, I've run my race, I've had a pretty good crack at it, and that's probably enough. Why don't I go home and start to get my life in order, And that was that. And I don't, like I said before, I don't have any regrets. I've got, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, everything's going good. I had a great career in motorsport. We went about 1,000 kilometres further than we ever thought we'd go, and I did it with the people I wanted to. So couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it's a great story. Yours is a great story, and I hope that us putting a bit of a spotlight on it in this episode helps plenty of people really stop and ponder how far you got and to the places that you went and the deals that you did and the cars that you drove, because it's a pretty cool story that I don't think anyone in Queensland or any other state's going to be able to kind of match in the years that follow. But I mean, it's easy for someone who's had their life in cars and racing for so long to get away from it, to do something else completely and not come back. But you've kind of kept an involvement, like you said earlier at the start of the chat, with the dirt racing. I think you've done some enduro races in a Mirage with your young blokes, and motor racing's still in your blood. And am I right in thinking this, and I think you might have told me this in previous years, Bathurst 1000 Day is still a big day in the McLean household? And is it true that the old race suits come out for dress-ups on race day?
Absolutely, they do. We dig out the old race cars and do driver changes and have a sweep. We put $10 in the tin and draw the drivers' names out of the hats and give a bit to charity and do a bit of stuff. So it's a pretty big day. It started out with a friend of mine came over. The first Bathurst I didn't race, he came over with. I was sitting there watching by myself, and he said, "I'm going to come and watch with you." I said, "That's all right. I'm having a quiet day. I don't want to do anything." And he walked in with a carton of VB and said, "There you go." And I said, "Oh, that's a fair bit of beer." He said, "No, that one's for you." And brought another one in for him. And then from then on, I said, "I'm going to watch Bathurst. I'm not inviting anyone. If anyone, my friends want to come over and watch it, you're happy to come over and hang around." And I think we had 130 people the other year here, so it was a pretty big show. So it was a good day. And it starts on the old shootout on Saturday, but. It is a good way. It's a good way to deal with not being there, I think. So, yeah, it's still a great day. It's great. It's a great Australian tradition.
It is, and you were part of it for a great period of it. Do you still cop recognition from people and remember the Greenfield BMs and the old race cars when people, no doubt see you at the odd motor race and other places around your travels?
It's surprising. It happens randomly at places you don't think so. People recognise the name, and I was at a funeral in Sydney, and a guy came up and was chatting to me about it, and he said, you're Cameron McLean, the old race car, blah blah blah, and started talking about it. And it's probably good that he came and saw me only last week, because then it refreshed a few memories for when I'm talking to you today. So brought a few things back to light, but it is quite bizarre. It's not as often as it used to be, but yeah, it's still there, and it's a nice little ego booster, if nothing else. So.
Nothing wrong with that, mate. There's nothing wrong with that. What would you change? I mean, a lot of the times we have these chats with people about their careers, and there's some stuff that they couldn't change just because of the way that things roll. But if you look back on it, what would you have done differently that might have changed things, or at least taken a slightly different path on it all?
When I got told not to pit for wets in 2000, I would have drove in the pits, and we would have won that race, I reckon. And I would have got one more minute of rain in 2007. And apart from that, there was no great fallouts or enemies or drama. That we didn't lose any friends really, or any business acquaintances over it. There's always issues, but you can work through them, and that's just, don't take it personally. It's just business. It's what it is. And probably not a lot really, because if I change something early on, it might change everything later. And with that, if I changed something earlier, if I won Bathurst in 2000, say, it could have changed my whole world. Who knows? Whether for better or for worse, doesn't matter. But it's I'm happy with where we went and where we ended up. And like I said, we got further with very little than what I thought we'd ever get. And we got further in motorsport than I ever thought we all thought any of us would ever get. As a family, and we're pretty chuffed about it, really, and proud of it.
No, you should be. You should be. One last one before we wrap this up. When do we get to see that AU Falcon V8 Supercar hit a racetrack? When, where, how, and why? Because I want to be there when it happens.
I will converse with you on the quiet, and we'll work something out.
All right.
You can let the people know. I haven't got a date, I haven't got a plan, but the V8 touring car movement is still murmuring under the ground. But I'm hoping by the end of this year.
All right, we'll hold you to that. We won't give specific dates or anything like that. We won't put you under the gun too hard, but we look forward to seeing that thing out having a ride. It's always great when the original pilots end up driving their old cars. So hopefully we can see that at some stage soon.
I've still got the team shirts, the race suits, the hats. It'll be retro.
You'll be good for retro round. You're the retro guy in the retro car. Makes sense. Cam, thanks so much, mate. Thoroughly appreciate it. I hope this has been as fun for you as it has been for me, because we've stepped over a lot of things here, and we probably missed a few things and skipped some stuff along the way. But great to catch up. Great to have a look at some of this stuff, and I reckon that you've got the best thing going for your Bathurst 1000 days, because you might be able to turn that into the biggest Bathurst 1000 party in the history of parties with the way that those things are going.
Yeah, I might. I'll see what I can do. I just need a bigger shed.
You might need to franchise those things around the country.
Yeah, I could do that. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Always thinking. Good to catch up, mate. Well bowled.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Great to go down memory lane with you.
Well, that's that. That's my chat with Cameron McLean. A big thank you to Cam for the time to sit down and go down memory lane. I think I enjoyed it a lot because it was his career very much of the era that I was coming into motor racing and working in the sport. So that super touring and V8 Supercar period of the 2000s is really great, and I hope you enjoyed it too, because there was some great stories. Some of the stuff that I'd forgotten about, and I think some of the stuff that Cam might have forgotten about over the journey as well. So many categories, so many cars, so many ups, so many downs. It really was an amazing ride for Cam McLean, and he's still a lover of the sport, which is great to know as well. I've got to get an invite. If I ever dip out on going to the Bathurst 1000, I want to go to one of his Bathurst parties. They sound like a whole pile of fun. The good news is too, there's more great motorsport chats ahead in upcoming weeks, so check back soon. In the meantime, there's more episodes in the archive for you to enjoy, but I'll catch you next time with another ep of the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn.